Welcome back to my podcast, listeners. I'm a battered wife, and this is my story. We're on episode 2. I thought I'll talk about my Nanaji story today. Like I mentioned earlier, I will begin my story at the beginning. A peek into my parents' lives will offer perspective on who they are as people and why they are the way they are. Today I will talk about my mother's background, mainly about her dad's story. My mom tells us about how her dad, my Nanaji, had been a little 8-year-old when he lost his entire family to the plague. Within days of one another, this thriving, healthy, happy family started dropping like flies. My mom tells us about how her dad held 2 of his younger sisters as they slowly succumbed to the dreaded disease. With their heads in his lap, they bid him a teary farewell. They had already lost their parents and a brother to the plague at this time. Till then, this family had been an affluent, thriving farmer family in Punjab with rolling acres of land and a herd of healthy animals. When the villagers saw the devastation of my Nanaji's family, they advised him to leave the village and seek his only surviving family member. They asked him to take a couple of his buffaloes and leave for his married sister's house, who lived a couple of villages away, and that village had not been affected by the plague yet. So his sister lived a few miles away, and the little boy left his entire inheritance. Of course, the villagers took over those things later. And he walked for over a couple of hours with the 2 animals to reach his sister's house. When he arrived, his sister's husband was none too pleased to see him. The little boy was not invited into the house. He was told that he could not bring those animals into the house. His sister's husband did not want someone who might be a carrier of the infection to be anywhere near his house. But of course, the sister could not abandon her brother, and so he waited outside their home while they discussed what they could do. After a discussion, the little boy was told that he would have to let the animals go. He was then asked to enter the gate of the house, but only allowed into the animal shed. There the tired orphan boy could finally take some rest. Food and water were kept at the entrance of the animal shed. Then his sister would back away, and then he could come forward and take it. This went on for several days while the little traumatized 8-year-old mourned alone. Finally, the quarantine period over, he was allowed to enter further into the house. Nanaji never did feel accepted or comfortable in his sister's house. The little child was given lots of physically laborious chores to do with not enough nourishment. There was no love or warmth for him here. Finally, he heard that the British officers were recruiting for the military. At that time, children as young as 8 could enroll to join the military. At the time, armed forces could be privately owned and child labor laws did not exist. So a 12-year-old Maggar Singh left home to join the military. There he thrived. He grew into a tall, strong young lad. Originating from the Sindh and Punjab region of what is now Pakistan, he was a good-looking, light-skinned lad with attractive features. Now tall and well-built, he participated in gymnastics and other sports. He had several friends here, both British as well as Indian. He fought valiantly during World War I. Over the span of his long career, he took 6 bullets overall. The most deadly by far was during World War I, where he was left for dead. He was rescued in the nick of time when a friend recognized him and thought he could still be saved. Another time, during World War II, yes, he did fight in both wars, he found himself with some bullet shards around his eye area. When he was taken to the doctor, he got the shards extracted while he sat fully conscious and unflinching. The doctor had said anesthesia was not possible for that surgery. This gives an insight into the inspiring and inspired person that Nanaji was. As he grew older, there was no one to think about his future. Magar Singh lived alone in the army quarters and spent his entire salary every month. He had no mentors. He had nobody to guide him, no father figure. His brother-in-law, the older brother-in-law, he didn't care. So Magar led a directionless life, just taking each day as it came. Thus, he found himself a 35-year-old single man in those days. After all, what self-respecting farmer would give his daughter to a landless man? He did find a bride at some point and wholeheartedly took on the role of a householder. He went about saving enough to build himself and his bride a beautiful house and bought teak wood to create the latest furniture in the house. No other house in the village was as glamorous or as elegant as theirs. Having seen it myself, I can vouch for the fact. Nanaji was in the strange situation where he was greatly respected as the valiant Subedar Major who had fought 2 world wars. Yet, he was barely making ends meet on his meager pension. The children, including my mother, relied on the kindness of neighbors to get some freshly extracted jaggery or some farm fresh vegetables, the leafy vegetables such as those used for making saag. At other time, Mom recalls sneaking into the fields of others to harvest a bundle of greens for saag. So Magar Singh's children spent their childhood in this strange paradox, wherein on the one hand their lifestyle involved elegant mannerisms remnant of their dad's military days, and on the other hand they had to manage the large family on a shoestring budget. So, while they sat and ate at a dining table unlike the other villagers and had tea sets and cutlery that their neighbors had probably never even seen, they also had to survive on only ₹5 per month. That was the pension, as there was no other source of income. What could he do in the village if you're a farmer without land? Mom painfully recalls one day when her older sister lost that ₹5 note on her way to the market. How difficult that month must have been for that family. Due to this problem, the gender disparity became more apparent to my mom when she was growing up, the problem of their shoestring budget and no other funds. Mom recalls watching her brother down liters of milk, whereas the girls were probably not given very much. She also recalls how she would come home from school absolutely famished, and the meal that she would get would be just 2 rotis. She said she would be just as hungry after the meal as she was before it. She was a growing girl and she was getting tall. She needed more food. I believe this played a part in her becoming someone who preferred male children over female children. Another time she recalls reading a beautiful poetry book and enjoying the beauty of lilting rhythms. I'm not sure who tattled and what was told, but I think she was beaten and shamed for her recreational reading. I believe this might have played a part in Mom never letting us read books that were not textbooks. We were not allowed to read library books. And even during vacations, we got very few books to read, with strict timings when we were allowed to touch them. Mom generally recalls working very hard, not getting enough nourishment, and finding lots of restrictions when it came to doing something she enjoyed, like playing with friends, even something like just going and playing on the swing outside with her female friends. I do believe she unconsciously imposed these restrictions on us too. Magar Singh was determined that his kids would study well. So he insisted that his children go to school every day. And then, doing a U-turn, he did not allow my mom to appear for her final class 10 exams because that meant going away from home and spending a few days living near the exam center. Even though the female teacher volunteered that she would take very good care of the girls, at this point Nanaji suddenly got very regressive and refused permission. This would later play a huge part in how mom felt about herself as someone who did not really even pass class 10 and the doors that it could have opened for her. I feel Nanaji oscillated between the progressive thinking that he picked up at the military and the regressive values that he was rooted in. The lack of financial prosperity also meant that Nanaji could not really find his daughters the kind of households in terms of marriage, rishta, that could match their intellectual level. Or one could say where the wavelengths of the groom's family would match their own wavelength. Having been brought up gently and kindly in spite of the challenges, the girls were not really prepared for the ujjad type of family they found themselves in after getting married. They had never been addressed with abusive words ever, no galis. And here the men of the household used such words liberally. By here I mean at my dad's family, referring to them as paid, sheep, used in a derogatory manner, among other things. They were simply not used to such crude mannerisms, having been treated like ladies most of their lives, and wilted quickly in such an environment. Of course, one has to adapt and carry on with life, and I do believe that mom managed to adapt. But Indian men have no platform where they can learn before they meet their wives how to treat women, how to talk to them. And this was the case with dad too. So mom often found herself feeling uncared for, even though that may not have been the intention. Some sadness and bitterness remains, especially if the woman feels she could have done better than the person she ended up with. I believe this sadness also played a part in increasing mom's natural tendency to be anxious. She did get panic attacks from time to time, but no one knew how to treat this sensitively. All in all, mom's personality was shaped by her experiences, the paradox of her childhood, the husband who was educated but naive and ignorant, and other such things. She became a mom who was overly strict and domineering, yet a softie within. So while I often felt suffocated, overwhelmed, and just wanted to flee, there was also a cocooning, sheltered feeling. I did feel warm and loved too. Something I never felt after I got married, not from the man, not from his family. I guess my childhood was a paradox too, but more about that later. I'll share more in episode 3. Until then, thank you for listening to my story. This is the story of my life, every word true, and I will discuss more about it in episode 3. Till then, take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay healthy. Bye for now.